What's going on, y'all? J-Vil here, Father Wounds Part 3, The Conclusion. So fast forward to 2018, and my father and I don't really have a relationship. We just talk every once in a blue moon, and later on that year, I would receive a phone call from my uncle crying on the phone saying that my father was in a terrible car accident and that he might not survive. And so immediately we jumped into the car, and we were about 13 hours away, and there was a good 4-hour window during that drive that we didn't know if my father was going to make it or not. And I remember just feeling terrible that, man, my father could die at any moment. And this whole time, I've had the door shut in his face. And I had this mindset that if my father, the only way that we would build a relationship is if my father would come to me and beg me for forgiveness. And only then would I open the door. And it was because I thought that the only way that I could receive healing from the wounds of the past is if my father were to apologize to me. I didn't realize that I could receive that healing elsewhere. And so during that drive, I made a vow to myself and God that I was going to love on my father no matter what if he were to survive. And that I was going to love him past the sin, past the dirt, and that we were going to have deep conversations, and I was going to take the conversation there, not to stay at that weather talk. And so my father would survive. He would be in an induced coma for about 4 to 5 days. And I remember my brother and sister and I jokingly saying, man, what if dad wakes up and he's like this loving person all of a sudden? And then we also said, well, he probably just gonna wake up and his first words will probably be like, if that asshole didn't cut me off, I wouldn't be here in the first place. But interestingly enough, my father pretty much woke up with a mixture of both. He was very loving and affectionate. I remember my sister told me that my father ended up giving her a big hug and a kiss when he woke up from the coma. She started telling me, like, man, he reminds me a lot of Papa Richie, which is our grandfather, who had passed away a few years prior to that. But she had mentioned, man, he reminds me a lot of Papa Richie and how he's talking, how loving he's being. And then he was saying a lot of, things like, I love you a lot. He was calling my brother and I Papi, which is like a term of endearment. But he was saying things that he never would say before. And I think one of the biggest things was in the midst of the worst time of his life, his children were there for him at the hospital, staying the night and being his aid. But I think in all that situation, if anything, not just changed my father, but I think it also changed me. My father didn't, he was pretty much the same in many ways, but in other ways he was more loving towards us. He was more affectionate towards us. And if anything, it peeled a layer off of him and made him more vulnerable. For me, I feel like it got me to a place where I no longer needed him to apologize to me in order for me to move forward and receive healing. That I was able to do that through prayer. I was able to do that through counseling and just talking it out. And that I didn't need to pursue that from my father. And that my only mission now was to just love on my father and do all that I can to build a strong relationship with him. And our relationship's not perfect whatsoever, but we're at a place where we're talking, and I'm very grateful for that. My hope through these series of videos is that I know that not everyone is in a similar situation. Not everyone can rebuild that relationship. But what everyone can do is receive healing. And so those of you who are in a similar situation where you do have a lot of pain and wounds from your father, maybe it's your mother, or maybe it's even both, I pray that you do seek healing. And it starts with you. It starts with having those tough conversations. It starts with, I would say, prayer. It starts with seeking counseling, finding a counselor who you can really talk it out with and figure out how to move forward with that. So my hope is, for those of you watching, I pray that you can find healing in this, and maybe some of you can restore your relationship with your parent, but it starts with you. Find that healing that you need and move forward with it. And if you can build that relationship back up, I encourage you to do so. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It will be difficult, but it will be worth it. So thank you all so much for watching these series of videos. I have more videos to come. I have music coming soon. But until then,